Hi everyone! Today we're going to be learning Perek Bet, Bizchut a Refuah Shalema for my wonderful Aunt Sarah Rivka Bat Mindel. Okay, Pasuk Aleph. Lama Rakshu Goyim V'Leumim Yagu Rik. Why are the nations getting excited and why are they contemplating nothingness? Pasuk Bet. Yitetzvu Malchei Eretz V'Roznim Nosu Yachad Al Hashem V'Al Mashicho. So the kings of the world are coming together, and the princes of the world are rallying against Hashem and against his Mashiach. So in the first two psukim, we see the nations of the world and their leaders coming together against Hashem and against the Mashiach and making a huge fuss. So first let's talk about when this is taking place. So Rashi quotes Chazal as saying that David here is referring to the Messianic era. And David is giving advice to the nations of how to interact with Hashem in the time to come. Another suggestion that Rashi gives is that really David is referring to a situation that's happening in his own life, possibly something that's happened in his past, which is the war with the Plishtim that took place in Perek Yud Zayin of Shmuel Aleph. And it's possible that he's talking about both. Pasuk Gimel, Ninetzkatz Mosor Temo, V'nashlicha Mimenu Avotemo. Let us sever their bonds and let us throw off from ourselves their ropes. This is what the nations of the world are saying. They're saying, we've had enough of being in bondage and being enslaved by Bnei Yisrael. It's time to make a change. We are going to get rid of their yoke from off of our shoulders. Pasuk Daled, Yoshev Hashamayim Yischak, Adonai Yilag Lamo, and Hashem is sitting in Shamayim and he's laughing at them and mocking them for the reaction that they're having. Pasuk Hey, Az Yidaber Alimo Ba'po V'charono Yivalimo. So all of a sudden Hashem changes his tune and gets angry and speaks to them in his wrath. So it's interesting because in Pasuk Daled, Hashem is laughing, and in Pasuk Hey, all of a sudden he gets angry. It seems to be that he has some mixed emotions here, which I thought was interesting. Pasuk Vav, V'ani nasachti malki al Tzion har kadshi, and Hashem says, and I have already established my representative in Yerushalayim, and he's there to stay, and he seems to be saying there's nothing you can do about it. Pasuk Zayin, Asapra al chok Hashem, Amar Elai b'niyata ani hayom yiladeticha, and David says, today I'm going to tell you a basic principle. Hashem said to me that I am his son, I am his chosen one, and again, reiterating the point from the pasuk before, I'm his chosen one and there's nothing you could do about it. It's already been established, it's a chok. Pasuk Chet, Sha'al mimeni v'atna goyim nachlatecha v'achuzatcha afsei aretz. And Hashem says to David, ask me anything, whatever request you have, I will give you anything you want. I will give you all the land until the ends of the earth. Pasuk Tet, Tiroim b'shevet barzel kechli yotzer tinaftzim. You will break them with an iron rod, and like a potter's vessel, you shall shatter them. So again, anyone who stands in your way, you are going to be able to completely defeat them. V'ata melachim askilu hivasru shiftei aretz. And David is giving the melachim advice. He says, be wise and practice justice in your lands. Yud Aleph, he continues his advice. Ivdu at Hashem b'yirah v'gilu b're'adah. Worship Hashem with fear, b'yirah, v'gilu b're'adah, which is a very interesting phrase. Gilu, be happy, b're'adah, and you're trembling. So again, this is a situation of mixed emotion that reminds me of Pasuk Dalet and Pasuk Hey, that you should be both happy and fearful at the same time. Pasuk Yud Bet, Nashku var, penya enaf, v'tovedu derech kivar kimat apo ashrei kol chosebo. Nashku bar, which we'll talk about in a second, how you translate that. Penya enaf, v'tovedu, lest Hashem become angry and you'll perish on the way. Ashrei kol chosebo, praise will be those who take refuge in him. So let's talk about for a second what the phrase nashku bar means. The Malbim describes the word bar translates the word bar as the usable part of the wheat as opposed to the chaff, so the good part of the wheat. And nashku is from the shoresh nashak, which means to kiss, which connotes a sense of intimacy and relationship and creating a connection. So the whole phrase together means be connected, have an intimate relationship with that which is good. And this can be compared to the previous Mizmor, Perek Aleph, in which the pasuk describes evil people as kamotz asher tidfenu ruach. Kamotz meaning chaff. you don't want to be associated with the chaff of the wheat. So this phrase seems to be saying, Nashku bar, stick with the right people, and you will be on the path of closeness to Hashem, and you'll be on Hashem's good side. Rabbi Tzvi Ram brings up a question about Pasuk Gimel, which is Ninatkat Mosor Temo V'nashlicha Mimenu Avotemo, that the nations of the world are saying we've had enough of Bnei Israel, and we've had enough of their bondage that they have put upon us. So it's interesting, if you think about it, when has this ever been the case? Has it ever been the case that Bnei Israel has had sovereignty, has had rulership over all of the nations of the world, that they're able to come up with this claim? So what exactly is this pasuk talking about? What is it referring to? Is it talking about political sovereignty? Is it talking about physical bondage? Or is it something deeper, something different? If you look in Masachet Avodah Zarah, Perek Gimel, Daf Gimel, the Gemara discusses cases in which non-Jews decide to take on mitzvot and then decide all of a sudden that it's inconvenient or uncomfortable, and so then they quote this pasuk from Tehillim, Ninatkat Mosor Temo V'nashlicha Mimenu Avotemo, that Hashem has put a yoke on us and we've had enough, and we are being shackled by Hashem. So the first case that the Gemara brings up is the case of non-Jews that decide to take on the mitzvah of sukkah, and then all of a sudden it gets hot and unbearable, and they say, this is so annoying, we're being shackled by Hashem, and they quote the pasuk from Tehillim. And then on Daf Gimel Amud Bet, there's a discussion of non-Jews who decide to wear tefillin and mezuzah, and then all of a sudden that becomes inconvenient as well, and they say, we're being shackled by Hashem, and we are rebelling, we can't do this anymore. So according to these two situations that are brought up in the Gemara, it seems to be that this pasuk is used in relation to religious concepts, not political bondage or physical bondage, but religious bondage. And so the nations of the world are not actually rebelling against political sovereignty, but they're rebelling against this allegiance to a moral and ethical law that the Jews are trying to teach to the rest of the world. And the Jews are saying that you have to be bound to something and recognize some kinds of higher authority and recognize the law of Hashem. And this is what the Jews represent, and this is what the nations of the world are fighting against and trying to get rid of. And that's why in Pasuk Bet it says, when it talks about the reaction of the Malchei Eretz, it says Yitzatfu Malchei Eretz v'roznim nosu yachad al Hashem v'al Mashicho. It doesn't say al Bnei Yisrael v'al Mashicham. They don't want to get rid of Bnei Yisrael because Bnei Yisrael aren't really bonding them physically. They are rebelling against the concept of Hashem. They're rebelling against the concept of a higher authority, a higher moral authority. And that's also why when David is giving them advice on how to really react to their concerns, he says, Asapra el chok Hashem. I want to talk to you about the importance of the law of Hashem and the importance of submitting to this higher concept and higher law. And he says, V'atam elachem haskilu, become wise. I don't want to threaten you. I want to give you advice. I want to help you understand the importance of serving Hashem. And this is where the importance of the phrase Gilu b'ra'ada comes up. Because David says, yeah, you view law, you view being subservient to Hashem as Mosor Temo Avotemo. You view it as ropes and as chains, but it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be miserable. It doesn't have to be horrible. Gilu b'ra'ada, if you submit to this higher authority, Gilu, you'll be happy, and it'll bring you meaning, and it'll bring you fulfillment in your life. Servitude to Hashem doesn't have to be viewed as a yoke. And that's why the phrase in Pasuk Yud Bet is used, Nashku bar. You should have a close relationship with that which is good. Hashem, the relationship with Hashem doesn't have to be that only of master and servant, although it has to be that also, and that's why it's Gilu b're'ada. You have to fear Hashem. But at the end of the day, you're creating this close relationship, this relationship with Nishikot, this intimate relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that also could be why the closing phrase of the Perek is Ashrei Kol Chosei Bo. And Ashrei is generally translated as praised be all those who seek refuge in him. But if you think about a different shoresh of Ashrei, a different shoresh is Osher, which is happiness. So you could say happy will be all those who take refuge in him. So if you decide to become subservient to Hashem and to submit to this moral law, at the end of the day, it's not going to be only difficult and only horrible and cumbersome, but it's really going to be happy and joyous and cause for celebration. And I think that while this is a great lesson by David for the nations of the world, I think it's also something for Yisrael to remember, and something that's important for us to integrate into our own lives, because oftentimes following the law of Hashem is cumbersome, and it really is difficult. It's difficult to get up in the morning. It's difficult to daven. It's difficult sometimes to keep Shabbos. Sometimes it's difficult to respect your parents. But we have to remember that at the end of the day, submitting to this law is going to ultimately bring us joy and bring us closer to Hashem, and not only be a yoke. And I hope that we are able to bring this lesson into our lives, and I hope that the learning that was done today will bring a refuah to Sarah Rivka Bat Mendel, and I hope you have a great day.